Welcome to your very first OWLS video. This is the first of a series of 3 videos to come. So OWLS stands for Outdoor Wilderness Learners, which is you. So all of these videos have something to do with being an outdoor wilderness learner. Each video will tell you what the theme is and what you'll be learning about for that video. The only thing that you're going to need for these videos, some flexibility, imagination, and with those 2 things, hopefully we'll have a good time. So normally we'd love to be doing programming with you in the outdoors together, but because of the times, we're all doing the best that we can. So we're thankful to be able to modify, but these videos might be a little awkward at times. Hey there. Hey. Hello. Hi. Welcome. Bienvenidos. Or they might be a little overwhelming or underwhelming, so bear with us. Open up your sense of imagination and flexibility, and together, even through the video, we'll be able to go on an expedition. So who is us? We are GEO, Gorge Ecology Outdoors. We're a small nonprofit based out of Hood River, and there's 3 of us. I am River Otter, and you'll meet Huckleberry. She's going to be giving you a lesson, and then you'll meet Steelhead. And Steelhead is going to be doing some activities with you all. So I'm River Otter, and river otters are a part of the weasel family. River otters find their habitat or their homes in fresh bodies of water or in rivers most commonly. And there are so many rivers in the Columbia River Gorge. Some examples of rivers are the Columbia River, the Klickitat River, the Hood River, the White Salmon River, the John Day, the Deschutes, the Wind River, the Little White River. So there are a tremendous amount of rivers in the Columbia River Gorge, and there are a lot of happy river otters that find their homes and their habitats, find what they need to survive in the fresh bodies of water near us. Along with all of these videos, you'll be able to have the option to write along in a journal. And the journal, we have a link in the description for this video below. So if you want to, you can click on that link, and there are questions that you can answer and things that you can fill out that all have to do with this video. So our very first video is all about the outdoors. You're gonna learn some vocabulary words. You're gonna learn what an ecosystem is, you're gonna learn what an organism is, and then you're gonna get some examples of some structures of the Shrubstep ecosystem. You're gonna see what all the Shrubstep ecosystem has and what makes the Shrubstep a Shrubstep. So without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Here is Huckleberry with some fun facts for you all.
Hi, my name's Huckleberry, and today I am in the Shrubstep Ecosystem. And I'm here to tell you a little bit about the Shrubstep and some different features of this ecosystem that make a Shrubstep a Shrubstep. An ecosystem is living things and non-living things that are working together to form a community. So, living things are things like animals and plants, and non-living things are things like rocks and other material that is no longer alive. Water and air are also not alive. An organism is part of an ecosystem, and an organism means any living thing. So I'm at Catherine Creek State Park in Washington, and we're along the Columbia Gorge. So we're right along the Columbia River. And if you live around here, then you might know that the ecosystem or the plants and animals around here change as you move along the Columbia River. So you might be wondering what Shrubstep means, and we can basically break it down. So a shrub is a small bush or like a small tree, and step is just a fancy word for grassland. So if you look around behind me, you can see that there are a little bit of both. There's some grasslands, and there's also some small bushes and things like that. So as you may notice, the Shrubstep ecosystem is fairly dry. It's a lot more dry than the forest or the coastal ecosystem. And the reason why the ecosystem here is so dry is because we're along the Columbia River Gorge. This dryness is due to something called the rain shadow effect. Where I am right now, I am east of the Cascade Mountains. And as you go further west, it's more west. So the reason why that is because water evaporates from the ocean, and as it is moved further east in the clouds, it rains and rains and rains, and it's hard for those clouds to make it over the mountains. So by the time that the clouds would be over here, they don't have as much moisture left in them. So we get a lot less rainfall than some towns further west along the river that are only about 20 miles away. One of the structures of a shrubstep ecosystem is a riparian area. And that basically means any area where there's a water source. So if you look behind me here, you'll see that there's this kind of strip of green trees. And underneath those trees, there's actually a little creek that is flowing into the Columbia. And a riparian area makes a really good habitat for a lot of plants, like we can see, but also animals, because it's a good source of drinking water and also food. This is another example of a riparian area, and as you can see, it's really green and full of tons of plants. But there's some water in this creek, which is providing water for the plants to grow and also a great habitat for some animals. So I see lots of little bugs around me, like mosquitoes and some bees. There's also lots of birds that are hanging out in these trees above me. So that's pretty awesome. These flowers are also growing right here because it is close to the water source. And it makes a really good habitat for them. If you look closely, you can see some little water skimmers that are on the surface of the water here. They think that this is a really great habitat to catch some food. Ooh, there he goes. So another feature of the shrubstep ecosystem is the living crust. And the living crust is basically a layer on the surface of the earth that is made up of things like moss and algae, fungi, and bacteria. And right here behind me, you'll see kind of an example of that. And so there's some rocks right here, and then on top there's kind of this layer of moss and algae and things like that. And the living crust kind of functions as a sponge. It helps to maintain moisture when it gets really dry in the shrubstep, and it can be a water source for plants and animals. It also is really good for the soil because it helps to protect the really nice, deep, rich soil from being blown away by the wind or erosion. So it's a really vital piece of the shrubstep ecosystem. Another structure of the shrubstep ecosystem is something called Lithosol. And Lithosol literally means rock soil. So it's an area where there's some kind of rocky soil that's covering the earth. So if you look behind me, you'll see some of these kind of broken up rocks that are just making up part of this hillside. And Lithosol is a really important structure because it helps to keep that soil in place, and it can help to maintain water in that soil as well by preventing evaporation in the hot sun. It can also provide protection for animals and plants. Some little animals like kangaroo mice like to hang out in the Lithosol because it's really good at keeping them safe from predators like hawks. One other structure that we haven't talked about yet is something called bunch grass. And bunch grass are the type of native grasses that were here before annual grasses. And they grow in little clumps, kind of like this. And you find them kind of in clusters spaced out all around. And they make really good habitat for lots of different animal species in the shrubstep. So there's a couple more structures of the shrubstep that I wasn't able to find at this particular spot, but I wanted to mention them. One of them, very important, is a shrub. And the most widespread type of shrub that you find in the shrub steppes around here is something called sagebrush. And sagebrush is a bush that can be it's usually around 3 feet high, but it can reach up to 6 feet. And it makes a really good habitat for different animals such as the sage grouse, which is the type of bird, or the sage sparrow, another bird. So keep your eye out for a really common shrub called sagebrush. Now we're going to take a minute to talk about plants and how they get their energy. So green plants use a process called photosynthesis to get their energy from the sun. And in photosynthesis, plants need 3 things. They need sunlight, water, and carbon dioxide. That's all any plant really needs to survive. And then they're able to take these three things and through a chemical process in the leaves, they are able to create energy for themselves in the form of sugar, and they also create oxygen. And as you know, us as humans breathe in oxygen. And when we breathe out carbon dioxide. So plants are able to take that carbon dioxide that we breathe out and transform it into more oxygen that we can use. So us and plants have a pretty cool relationship. So as you can see, these leaves are green. And the reason that they are green is because they have something called chloroplasts in them. Those are a special type of cell that are able to take the sun's energy and turn it into sugar energy that this plant can use to grow big and strong. So we just learned that plants get their energy from the sun. Well, can we as humans get our energy from the sun? Well, not directly. Every living thing on Earth gets their energy from the sun. But not everybody gets it directly. Energy is passed down through something called a food chain. So all energy starts with the sun and then is passed to the green plants, also known as producers. Then the consumers eat producers. So animals or consumers eat plants and use those for energy. There's also a group called secondary or tertiary consumers. And what that means is that animals are eating other animals, so they're like one step removed from the plant. But still that energy is coming way back at some point from the sun. After consumers come the decomposers. And decomposers are things like worms, bacteria, fungus that break down dead stuff and turn it into soil. And soil has great nutrients that are able to be cycled back and used by producers or plants to grow extra strong and healthy.
Hey, what's happening? My name's Steelhead, and a steelhead is a type of a fish. And they're born in freshwater, so maybe born in the Columbia River or the Klickitat River. But then after they're born, they swim out to the ocean. They spend a bunch of time in the ocean, a few years, eating a bunch of food, getting nice and big. Then when they're ready to reproduce or lay their eggs, they swim back upstream into the freshwater where they were born. So they're kind of like a salmon, and the term for a fish that goes out to the ocean, comes back and lays eggs is called anadromous. So steelhead and salmon are anadromous. But salmon can only do that one time. Salmon go out to the ocean, come back, lay eggs, and that's it. That's the end of their life cycle. Steelhead can do this 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 times. So they're a pretty cool fish, and my name's Steelhead. Well, today I'm going to be doing some kind of trying to guide you through some activities. I'm going to be asking you to go outside and just do some things. You could do some of these from inside, but ideally we're outside to do this. You can do this from right wherever you are staying, wherever you're watching this video from. You can do it right there. Today I came out into the Shrubstep ecosystem, and I'm going to kind of take us on a little tour of the Shrubstep ecosystem and looking for some of these structures that make up the ecosystem here, looking for some of the organisms, looking for some of the non-living things, looking at some of the plants here and how they're getting their energy, how they're photosynthesizing, and how the food chain is working out here. So here we go. All right, our first activity is to just find a spot where we can sit or stand by ourselves for about 10 minutes. And we're just gonna sit there and use all of our senses to notice what's happening around us. So we're listening, we're looking, we're smelling, if you can taste the air, we're feeling. So we're just sitting here and noticing what's going on. And we're just going to sit totally silent for about 10 minutes. And as we're doing this, we're thinking about the organisms that we see and how they're getting their energy. So is their energy coming directly from the sun? Are they using photosynthesis to make their own energy? Do they have to eat something else? Are they eating a producer? Are they eating a plant? Do they have to eat another animal? Are they a consumer? Also, while you're sitting there, you could try to think of a poem and create a poem as you're sitting and listening and observing, using all of my senses to observe what's happening. I'm feeling a nice breeze. Or you could just sit there too. You could just sit there silently and just notice everything that's happening around you and feeling the air and feeling the sun and the wind, looking for organisms. I just saw a bird, I saw a bug flying around, I see a lot of plants. I just heard a hawk. Okay, another activity we're gonna do is a scavenger hunt. So again, you're just doing this right wherever you are, and hopefully it's outside. And first part of the scavenger hunt is to look for living things and look for non-living things. Then after you do that, you could take it a step further, and all of the living things that you find, you could put them into groups of producers, consumers, and decomposers. So did they come from a producer, did they come from a consumer, or did it come from a decomposer? Okay, so I'm gonna start walking around, and I'm not collecting this stuff, but here I see a lot of non-living things, all these rocks. I see some things that are no longer alive that were once living, so a lot of branches and sticks and leaves that are on the ground. That's all important material to help the soil. So far everything I've found, here's more flowers over here and plants, all these trees. So far everything that I've found has been a producer or has come from a producer. But I'm gonna start looking a little bit closer to see if I can find something from a consumer. As we're walking here, I want to take this time to respectfully acknowledge the indigenous people that have inhabited this land since time immemorial, and the indigenous people of the Wasco and the Wishram tribes. And I want to particularly thank the elders of those tribes that have and continue to steward this land here, so that I now have the opportunity to steward this very special place. And let's see what's down here in this little canyon. See if we can add some consumers to our scavenger hunt. Here's a pretty good example of Lithosol, all these piles of rocks here, right in there. That's a decent example of Lithosol. Maybe let's see if we can find any organisms using the Lithosol. Here's a good example of the living crust. Right, there's all this stuff called lichen. So there's all this lichen in here in the grass holding on to the water. So that top inch or so of the ground is what we call the living crust, and then down below that is the soil. All right, now the living crust, there's a really good example of it right there. So I'm not going over there because it's really really fragile. The living crust is really fragile, so I'm staying on the trail. Another way to call that a living crust is a little more scientific, is the cryptobiotic crust. So bio, you're talking about living. So this stuff is super important to have in this ecosystem because it really holds the soil in place, it absorbs the water, lets organisms keep surviving through these warm and dry summer months. Look up this way. Riparian area. More riparian area down there. Favorite, I love the riparian area. Steelhead swimming through the riparian zone. Another cool plant. This plant actually has medicinal properties. You see it has these white leaves. It has that nice pollinator on there. Consumer. This plant has these fern-like leaves down here. Here's that other plant with the star-shaped leaves that's really soft and has a little bit of the purple flower still left on it. All right, you're in for a treat, because the reason we say only green plants, those are the only organisms that can use the sun's energy directly, only green plants. So all of these plants out here, even the ones that look like they are a little brown right now, those all started off nice and green a couple months ago in March and February. If we would have come here then, this would all be really green. There are plants that don't get their energy from the sun, and I just found one. This purple flower here is a parasite. So it is actually stealing the energy from these other plants. Yeah, nice. Okay, here we're coming into a riparian zone. Gotta watch our step here on this trail. We have a riparian zone coming up over here with all these trees, and even as I look, all these trees tell me there's the riparian area here. And even as I look up the hill, I can see where the riparian area continues up there, even without seeing any water. Oh, I have some more evidence from organisms. I think a coyote left that one. Down the nice riparian area. Steelhead's favorite spot. All right. I got up in this tree and I found some consumers. There's a bunch of ants down here. Pretty nice view from up here. Ooh, I just heard a consumer. That could go on my scavenger hunt. Okay, well that was fun climbing in that tree. I'm gonna keep on going. I'm still looking for things on my scavenger hunt. See 5 different shades of green, I think. Right back here we have a shrub. Can't have Shrubstep Ecosystem if you don't have shrubs. And we kind of have some Lithosol here. We have a good bit of this rocky soil. But Lithosol is usually a whole bunch of rocks. This is actually more rocks interspersed with some of the living crust. But Lithosol is really when you have a pile of rocks, basically, like maybe at the base of the cliffs that I can see way off in the distance. See some more shrubs up here. That's the Shrubstep Ecosystem. Oh, I love this plant. These leaves are so soft. They have these like star-shaped kind of look to them. And a couple months ago, these would have been big purple flowers. And they're actually kind of fuzzy feeling. You might be able to see the Columbia River way down there. In Mount Hood. There's a cool yellow flower, yellow and orange.
Thank you so much for joining us for this very first OWLS video. I hope that you enjoyed learning some things with Huckleberry and you enjoyed the activities with Steelhead, and we'll see you next time for our second video.